We don't have to go, it is not rocket science to understand what climate science is doing to the communities and especially to women.
Dupattas and saris were tied to the trees, long dresses, long hairs were tied to the trees, and I'm sure in a place like Tamil Nadu, no woman is going to say, no, run to save my life.
In Bangladesh, when I used to work with Oxfam, in Bangladesh when there was the cyclone, a large number of casualties was women. The reason being the fact that the way women dress makes it difficult for them to run when water washes in along with a cyclone. People in the village, the men in the village started marrying more wives, having more women, The reason for that was their first wife actually has all the legal rights of a wife. The second wife or the third wife, who is younger, is often a widowed woman or a single woman in the village who is already vulnerable because she's single, she's poor, she's marginalized, she's from another community. So you have cases where women marry more women, and the younger women are brought into the family as wives, and their only job is to fetch water. They just go and fetch water for the family. So when the water table goes down and further down with drought, climate impacted drought or climate impacted reasons, these women spend more and more hours on the road.
Wetlands irkalam or water resources neenga solreenga and mari irkalam, or you have the land resources, or you have agriculture resources. Does it belong to women? இது வந்து நீங்க எவ்வளோ சொன்னாலும், எவ்வளோ நீங்க challenges பத்தி பேசினாலும், அவங்கள்ட்ட அந்த community resources இல்லைன்னா அவங்க மேனேஜ் பண்ண முடியாது.
The way the women protest are much different from the way the men protest. எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். ஓகே, ஆக்சுவலாக சாய்நாத் பேசி முடிச்சதுக்கப்புறம் there is nothing much left for the panel to discuss because he's like covered everything. பிரியாவும் நானும் அதான் பேசிகிட்டு இருந்தோம், நாங்கள்லாம் என்ன பேசணும்னு நினச்சோமோ இஸ் லைக் covered everything, and I'm sure அது உங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப யூஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இருந்திருக்கும். But there are some areas that we wanted to touch. But before that, I really want to introduce both my very illustrious panelists. I'm like really honored to be here along with them. Ms. Supriya Sahu is Additional Chief Secretary of the Government of Tamil Nadu, and she is behind many pioneering efforts to combat climate change, like setting up of climate change mission for Tamil Nadu, and that Manjapai Iyakkam, which personally I think I really like it a lot. So she's behind many such important movements, and I'm sure if Tamil Nadu is thinks ahead in terms of environmental justice and climate change, she is the brain behind it. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here and being here. Priya Pillai is a dear friend, but she's also been an activist, social and environmental activist for over 20 years, working on various platforms. Thank you, Priya, for being here. So basically, I thought before I could ask them to speak for maybe 3 to 5 minutes on their thoughts, and the idea is to then ask them questions. But I thought you should know one thing, that how women are disproportionately affected during climate disasters, or even during any other natural disasters. I wanted to start by saying that in the recent earthquake in Afghanistan, very recently, 2/3 of the victims were women, and that's because one of them have said that the Taliban government doesn't allow women to step out of their homes. These kind of things. Why Sainath spoke about tsunami? Why were women killed more in tsunami? Because I covered tsunami as in Nagapattinam and in Kadalur, and I saw how the dupattas and saris were tied to the trees, long dresses, long hairs were tied to the trees, and I'm sure in a place like Tamil Nadu, no woman is going to say, no, run to save my life, stripping myself. There are other factors which affect this. There are cultural factors which affect this. There are many such issues because of which during natural disasters women are disproportionately affected. But Yeah, I would like to ask Priya to speak about some such issues, and maybe after that, Supriya ma'am to, she's doing a lot of efforts on this front. I know she is doing some things that are intended to empower women to combat climate change. So I would request her to specifically speak on that. Priya, can you start?
Thank you, Kavita. It's a pleasure to be here in MOP College among so many young students, women as well as men. I can see a lot of boys also in the audience. It's a pleasure always to be here along with Supriya ma'am and with Sainath and other friends in the audience. Thank you so much for inviting me over to talk about this. I'd like to, so as Kavita said, Sainath spoke about a lot of things which connected us to women and climate change, but I'd like to share 2-3 stories, not so much in terms of data, but a couple of stories I wanted to share. Before going into the stories, I'd like to briefly touch upon why I think this is not just about women, it's about, I'd like to say women and other genders as well. We know that we are in a world where there are women and then there are other women, men, and then there are other genders as well. So to be more inclusive, I know for sure that it's not only a fact that, not only women, but persons of other genders also are impacted by climate change, and they are impacted differently from men as well, like women. So, and gender is a social construct. It's not biological. The fact that there are women, men, and there are people of other genders, it's a biological thing. But what roles are assigned to them, how they are perceived in society is a mindset, and that perception is gender. So when we talk about how women or people of other gender are differently impacted by climate change, it's very important to understand. In the morning, Sainath was talking about role division and unpaid labor. This role division comes from historically us dividing roles or having a certain perception about how women should behave, how women should dress, what is the work that women should do, as opposed to how men should behave, how men should dress, what kind of work men should do. So this essential division of roles and the perceptions and the roles that we have attributed to women and people of other genders in society is what determines the impacts also. Kavita spoke about tsunami. I'd like to speak about so many other instances where we see that women are at the receiving end. Why? Because of the roles that they've been given in society. We know for sure that in Bangladesh, when I used to work with Oxfam, in Bangladesh, when there was the cyclone, which devastated Bangladesh and Sundarbans, a large part of Sundarbans as well, a large number of casualties was women. The reason being the fact that the way women dress makes it difficult for them to run when water washes in, along with a cyclone. In floods, we've seen in North Bihar floods, constantly we've seen the 2017 floods, we've seen how the number of casualties in women is very, very high. Again, it's attributed to the fact that a girl child is not allowed to learn how to swim. The likelihood of a boy as a kid to learn how to swim is much higher than a girl getting that same opportunity in a village or even in a city. A girl child learning how to swim, which is a life skill. It doesn't have to be about women or men, but then that's the role, that's how society works, So in times of a disaster, the likelihood of a girl child losing her life or a woman losing her life is very high, merely because of the way gender has been perceived by us and the role that we've given. The dress that we wear, In the cyclone, it was very clearly documented in an Oxfam study that more women casualties occurred because women, because of the way they were dressing, with their saris which got wet, they were not able to escape or run faster. Similarly, the roles that are socialized in women from childhood, their job is to take care of the children, take care of the valuables, take care of the older people. So the whole caregiving, nurturing role that's set aside for them. So even in a disaster, when a woman is running, she just doesn't run away by herself, unlike men. So she'll pick up 2 children, she'll pick up the most valuable documents because she is thinking that, okay, where am I going from here? I'm going into a makeshift camp, on the roadside, right? So I need my documents, I need for my family. So this thing that's socialized between for women becomes a barrier for her, and so hence women are impacted differently. You've seen how in women have been prey to sexual violence in mostly after disasters. There's lots of documented evidence of when women are moved, or when whole populations are moved into shelters after a big disaster. The women and girls, adolescent girls there, are subject to sexual violence. So there's a high incidence of sexual violence when they are put in these shelters where post disasters. So these are all challenges that women or people of other genders face by virtue of the fact that they are women, which is different from being a man. Again, access is a big issue. So I'd like to share 2 stories of climate change from the women's perspective from 2 different geographies, one from Maharashtra and one from Bihar. They are about water, but one is about drought, the other is about floods and how it differently impacts women. So this is the story of Pani Bais, the water wives of Dengamal village in Maharashtra, which is, this village is around 185 kilometers away from Mumbai, and it has a small population of around 500 people. And in this country where polygamy is abolished by law, it's illegal to have multiple wives. In this village, you have this whole this polygamy has restarted for exactly the reasons that Sainath was talking in the morning. Why? Because women are seen as people who can carry water for the family. So this eligibility of marriage, your only eligibility when you're pulled out of school, that's left with you is that, are you strong enough to carry water for the family? And if you're strong enough to carry water, you will be married off. That becomes your eligibility in a drought affected area. So here in this village, the nearest water source is actually 6 hours away. There's a dam and a well near the dam, which is the only water source for the village. So in monsoons, so when there's a non-monsoon season, women have to walk 6 hours in a day to get water for the village and household for drinking and sanitation purposes. What happens is, people in the village, the men in the village started marrying more wives, having more women, The reason for that was their first wife actually has all the legal rights of a wife. The second wife or the third wife, who is younger, is often a widowed woman or a single woman in the village who is already vulnerable because she's single, she's poor, she's marginalized, she's from another community. So you have cases where women marry more women, and the younger women are brought into the family as wives, and their only job is to fetch water. They just go and fetch water for the family. So when the water table goes down and further down with drought, climate impacted drought or climate impacted reasons, these women spend more and more hours on the road walking down. So if they walk 3 hours a day, with changing climate patterns and seasons, they end up walking 12 hours a day just fetching water. In return, they get the address of having a husband, that okay, she's so and so's wife. She gets a room in a house, in that house, she gets food. That's all that she's asking for. So that's the kind of vulnerability we are talking when we talk about climate change and women. This is not like, it's a well reported story, you can read it, it's also online. I'd like to take you to Bihar from Maharashtra, where the issue is not lack of water, where the issue is abundance of water. The North Bihar floods, everybody knows, every year the Kosi River floods in Bihar. It's like every year North Bihar is inundated with floods. 2017 was really, really bad. It was more pathetic. And this image is of a lady who, along with her, who was a single woman again in her village, she moved into a roadside. So on the NH, the national highway, there was a makeshift tents that was set up as a rehabilitation camp post the flood. She moved into that camp along with her teenage daughter. So a man approached her and said that I can marry your daughter and I will live in this village with your daughter. This lady, because of her poverty and her marginalization, she took 5,000 rupees from that person and she married off her teenage daughter to this man. The man who promised to stay in the same village moved out of this village, went off to Chandigarh with his new wife, and soon there was a lot of violence in that marriage. In 6 months down the lane, and when he tried to further sell her off to somebody else, she escaped from that violence and somehow, she managed to come back home. When she came back to that village, the village was not ready to accept her. She is the dropout student. She's the teenager who would have dropped out from school, out of poverty, who was subject to all of this. She was subject to human trafficking. Why? Because she landed in a disaster which made her stay in a place which made her very prone to these kind of people who could just attack her. So these are two stories. But I just don't want to talk about women as victims here. I feel women are also leaders in solutions. They are playing a huge leadership role in bringing solutions. So in Maharashtra, where you have the Pani Bais or Pani wives, you also have a large number of women in the community who are setting up Pani committees, and they are working together to revive the water bodies in their villages. They are working to look at how their traditional water system was, water management system was, how it was eroded, and now they've understood the need for, reworking on those systems. And now you have villages in Maharashtra where women are playing a leadership role to rejuvenate water bodies in their villages, which is a solution. So women are also in a lot of leadership role, doing solutions. One such, this is again, very connected to climate change, but not spoken of as a direct link, because we all know that fossil fuel based energy systems are the major contributors of climate change. So there are communities in the central Indian belt. So these images are from, Singrauli district in Madhya Pradesh, where again, in this region, that there are the sizable population in that region is tribal. There's a huge population that is tribal, and then there are non-tribal communities as well, but they are all forest dependent communities. They derive their lives and livelihoods from forests. And we all know, we talk about the Green India mission, we talk about greening the planet, we talk about planting trees. Why do we talk about all of these things? Because we know how important forests are, how important a carbon sink a forest is, right? So these communities live in the forest, their livelihoods are dependent on the forests, their lives are built around these forests. But you had mining companies coming in to mine out this entire forest. Basically 1,182 hectares of forest land was threatened to be mined out, with 54 villages were threatened to be displaced by that mine. We don't see this as, and then you saw that women, you can see in the image on the left side, you can see how women fought. From 2009 to 2015, the movement was led by women in these villages. They fought to save their forests, save themselves from being displaced. That also is a proxy battle to save, fight climate change, because they fought to save our carbon sink, that big forest which would otherwise have been cut down, and coal mined up and burnt up, causing carbon emissions. They stopped it to, for their lives, their livelihoods, as well as for this planet and for us. So again, this woman, so they fought this long battle for till 2015, and in 2015, they went through a lot of issues, and challenges. They were jailed, they were beaten. There are cases that are still ongoing in this fight. But finally, they were able to get that mine deallocated. They were able to save the livelihoods of 54 villages. They were able to save a huge carbon sink, because today as we sit here, we talk about, trees and, carbon markets and, the need for planting trees and, selling it and offsetting carbon and all of that. So what these women were essentially doing is playing. We all know the Chipko movement, it was started by women. It was women led. So women play a very, very important role. They're not just, of course they are vulnerable, and they are on the other side. The vulnerabilities that climate change bring to them are very different, but they are playing a huge leadership role to also bring out solutions, and they're fighting every day. There are small battles in every part of this country which women are fighting to save their access to natural resources, to save, you know, climate, to save the environment and protect this planet.
Thank you so much. So பிரியா சொன்ன ரொம்ப முக்கியமான ஒரு பாயிண்ட் வந்து எப்படி விமன் ஆர் ஆல்சோ லீடிங் அண்ட் ஃபைட்டிங் அகேன்ஸ்ட் கிளைமேட் சேஞ்ச். நம்ம தமிழ்நாட்டிலே நிறைய பார்த்துருக்கோம். அண்ட் ஒன் திங் தட் ஐ வாண்டட் டு ஆட் டு ஹர் இஸ் பெர்ஹாப்ஸ் த வே த விமன் ப்ரொட்டெஸ்ட் ஆர் மச் டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஃப்ரம் த வே த மென் ப்ரொட்டெஸ்ட். இன்னும் நம்ம வந்து சிப்கோல அவங்க சொன்ன சிப்கோல பார்த்தா they just go and hug the trees. And in Kudangulam, all of us, like in Poovulagin Nanbargal, we were there at Kudangulam, and it was a women-led protest against a nuclear reactor, where I saw them sitting and cooking, community kitchen start பண்ணி அங்கேயே சமைச்சு அங்கே சாப்பிட்றது. That was a form of protest. Greenham Common protest against England நடந்த protestல வந்து one major form of protest was to hang sanitary napkins and diapers, because the message that they wanted to say was that they were standing, they are fighting for the generations that were to come, you know. நாங்கள் எங்களுக்காக ஃபைட் பண்ணல, we are fighting for our kids, we are fighting for our children. That was the message that they wanted to say. And these are the kind of protests that the women always advocated. They were about real development, they were about real life. And that's what I wanted to add. But I would now request Supriya ma'am to, you know, she as a bureaucrat, as a very senior bureaucrat, she would have seen lots of women and how they've been affected, and she's also been advocating solutions. So maybe you should also talk about the solutions that you have personally brought in.
Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. I've really lost count of the number of times I've come to your beautiful college, and always a pleasure to meet, you know, such bright and very talented group of girls over here. Really very happy to be here. Thank you very much for this honor. கவிதா பேசும்போது சொல்யூஷன்ஸ் என்ன, நம்ம வந்து என்ன எப்படி டிசைன் பண்ணணும்னு நீங்கள் கேட்டிங்க. சி, நம்ம வந்து கிளைமேட் சேஞ்ச் ஒரு ப்ரோக்ராம் டிசைன் பண்ணுறோம், ஒரு மிஷன் டிசைன் பண்ணுறோம். If it is designed with, you know, the different variations in mind, the kind of challenges we have, it's actually not a very easy thing to design when you design a climate program. So what's the best way to design to make sure that everybody gets represented? நீங்க grassroots ல இருந்தேவும் women ல இருந்து நீங்க feedback எடுத்துட்டு தான் நீங்க டிசைன் பண்ணா சரியா வரும். So one thing which I have seen, ஏற்கனவே நீங்க எல்லாரும் சொன்ன மாதிரி, they are already so burdened. Whether any kind of a disaster, they are already very burdened. So the best thing when you design a program is don't burden them anymore. எப்போவுமே நம்ம வந்து டிசைன் பண்ணும்போது என்ன சொல்கிற, விமனுக்கு வந்து கொடுத்து அவங்க நல்லா பண்ணுவாங்க, நல்லா தான் பண்ணுவாங்க, அதில் ஒன்றும் டவுட் இல்லை. பட் தென் தே ஆர் ஆல்சோ கெட்டிங் really burdened with so much of programs, so much of schemes which is, you know, kind of coming on to them. I think one lesson which I have learnt is that it is very, very important to make sure that three things happen, especially when you talk about marginalized women. Thanks to the education, empowerment, there is no doubt, let's not deny that those who are getting good education, good opportunities, they are at least able to, you know, able to go forward. But there are groups which are not able to have access. I think it's important, இப்போ climate change பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் we must make sure that what are the things that are, you know, let me first say what exactly is likely to happen. What is going to happen is that community assets இருக்குல்ல நம்ம கிட்ட, whether wetlands இருக்கலாம் or water resources நீங்க சொல்றீங்க அந்த மாதிரி இருக்கலாம், or you have the land resources, or you have agriculture resources, isn't it? Does it belong to women? So இது வந்து நீங்க எவ்வளோ சொன்னாலும், எவ்வளோ நீங்க challenges பற்றி பேசினாலும், அவங்கள்ட்ட அந்த கம்யூனிட்டி ரிசோர்ஸஸ் இல்லைன்னா அவங்க மேனேஜ் பண்ண முடியாது. Can we have programs to have these community resources owned by women? I think that's an important thing, and the point that we are looking at the Tamil Nadu's climate change program. So if you look at the missions that we have 3 missions in Tamil Nadu. We have climate change mission, wetlands mission, and green Tamil Nadu mission. All these missions, they are aimed at improving community resources that are with women. I'll give one example. இப்போ ஒரு பிச்சாவரம் அலையாத்தி காடுகள் or mangroves, as we all know, that's a very important place, and everybody knows that mangroves are super fighters against the adverse impact of climate change, isn't it? Mangroves, I think 8 to 11 times they are much more powerful than forests, other normal forests, because they have the capability to fix carbon more. ஸோ அங்கே வந்து ஒரு தடவை அங்கே போகும்போதே மேன்க்ரோவ்ஸ்க்கு வந்து ஒரு போட்டில் இருக்கும்போது ஒரு பக்கத்துலேயே ஒரு ஃபேமிலி ஹஸ்பண்ட் ஒய்ஃப் ஒரு சின்ன போட்டில் இருந்தாங்க. அந்த ஃபேமிலி கிட்ட நான் பேசினேன், எப்படி இருக்குது உங்களுக்கு இப்போது, முன்னாடி எப்படி இருந்தது, இப்போ நீங்கள் வந்து ஒரு உங்கள் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் என்ன இருக்குது. அண்ட் they explained it to me. The woman told me, முன்னாடி 1 மணி நேரத்துக்குள்ளே நிறையா ஃபிஷ் நமக்கு வந்து கிடைக்கும், வெரைட்டி ஆஃப் ஃபிஷ் இருக்கும், crabs and so many other things, shrimp they will get. But what is happening now, 5-6 hours வந்து ஃபிஷிங் பண்ண பிறகு கூட அவ்வளோ குவான்டிட்டி கிடைக்கிறது இல்லை, அவ்வளோ வெரைட்டி கிடைக்கிறது இல்லை. We don't have to go, it is not rocket science to understand what climate science is doing to the communities and especially to women. What is the answer? The answer is, if that local resource or if that brackish water, it belongs to that local community and they have the power to make sure that no pollution comes over here in that particular place, they will be able to make use of that facility better. So that is one point. Let us make sure that all these community resources, they belong to the local community groups, especially women. So ownership rights, I personally feel, is very important. Second thing, in order to fight the adverse impact of climate change, what's the thing that is something which is very important but totally neglected, which is One Health. Me and Sundar, we keep discussing this, that you know these jargons which the world throws at you, One Health, and you know, carbon sink and all this kind of it. So I think one important thing is, do women really understand what this climate change is all about? They may not understand it, they are still fighting it. We don't have to really tell them, they have the solutions. As we are talking, they are already fighting this. But I think what is more important is demystifying all these jargons. That is something which is important. So what is this carbon sink? What is this, you know, the kind of CO2 that we are talking about, global warming that we are talking about. So I think there has to be a kind of a very important understanding that we need to demystify so that they do understand. That is one thing. The third thing is about One Health I spoke about. All of you are, you know, in a position where you can talk about and take care of your own health, but do you really do it? That is something which most women ignore, even young women. What about the public health systems that we have to take care of the health challenges that are going to come in view of the climate change risks that we have? We need to look at that. Whether our public health institutions equipped, they are having enough facilities to take care of the challenges, which is different kinds of diseases, especially cancers, especially relating to cancers which affect women. That is something which we need to look at, build our public institutions, build the capabilities of our health systems to take care of the pressure that is going to come. I think our design of our mission is very much rooted in that. That is something which I wanted to talk about. Third thing, I spoke about the community resources. How do you make these community resources are accessible to women so they don't have to travel 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers just of 2 pots of water which they carry so many miles in the scorching sun? How do you make sure? That is the question we need to ask. So availability of the potable water, availability of drinking water resources at the community level. And for that it is important to restore back our forests. It is very important to make sure we have, so let me just give some practical examples and not only give some lecture as to what should be done. I do not know whether what we are doing it adequate, but I know we are doing it right. So one program that we are doing is creating these community forests, which we are calling it as Margada Punjolais. We have 100 community forests already kind of identified, areas identified. We are handing it over to the local community after plantation to make sure that the community has access to the firewood, has access to fruits, has access to medicinal plants, and the access to fodder. This is also not only water but grazing, fodder, availability of firewood, all of that is very, very important. That is something which is very important. Our wetland mission is also kind of targeted at that. I think I'd like to stop here with the third important point. I spoke first about the right that they should have on community asset. I spoke about health aspect, which is very important. Third is income. And I think that is something which is very important. How in the wake of climate change, we try and create additional income opportunities for women. I'll give you one small example. In Madurai, I had the opportunity to visit a particular place outskirts of Madurai, and I was so happy to see this entire thing is run by women. They are all sweepers, scavengers. They have come together. They are collecting this waste earlier, which used to go for the landfill. They used to only sweep and they just used to get whatever the municipality used to provide, the local panchayat actually, outskirts of municipality. Now they have set up a facility which allows them to segregate the waste, and they are taking the waste to a kind of a biogas plant which is helping them to make gas, which they are selling to the hotels and getting some additional income, and their income is almost double. So there is a lot of opportunity in all these interventions where we can try and improve the health of women, income of women. I think these are some practical solutions that I would definitely like to suggest. And I forgot about a last and important thing when I spoke about when I wanted to talk about nutrition aspects of women. I think the public distribution systems also should be looked at from a climate lens to see that what kind of a nutritional supplements are available for communities, especially for women, to take care of their health and the health of their families also, but first their health in a much better fashion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. I mean, maybe with the permission I can add that there is also an announcement in the budget about giving auto rickshaws to women, and
yes.
Would you like to elaborate on that, ma'am? Because I thought that was a very interesting thing to please.
So I strongly believe that economic empowerment is also equally important as other aspects of empowerment. All of us, when we study, as students, you are all studying, all of you want to get into a good job so that you have your own source of income. Last time when I was here, I mentioned this, that every woman must try and earn some money of her own. Even if your husband is earning, doesn't really matter. Not because of anything else, because when you actually work, you get up in the morning, you get ready, you step out of the house, you meet so many people, you read newspaper, you look at the news, you learn so much. It keeps this brain ticking, and something happens over here. So that's why when you say that they are confined into homes, they are not allowed to come, more than that psychological trauma of just being confined to a very close space, it's also very, very important to know that your brain stops working. because you are not able to interact. You're not able to do something on your own. So this self-worth, I am able to do something on my own. For me, it's very important. For every woman, it should definitely be something which should propel her in that direction. So what we are designing, and I'm not saying I am designed it, we actually sat with a group of women and asked them, how do I make sure that your income is enhanced? Something that you can do comfortably, something that not puts an additional burden on you, that you are going and selling in this scorching sun, and it kind of puts you in a situation where you are tired at the end of the day. What is it that you would like to do? And then we all sat down, and then this thing came that why not we have autos given to women which they themselves will drive, the e-autos, so that there is no pollution, which will help these self-help groups of women to sell their produce comfortably, and also given an opportunity. So we had a selfish interest saying that neenga manja poi konjam sell panninga, neenga glass bottles na eco matters la konjam neenga pandringla, kandipa naanga pandrom அப்படினு சொல்லிட்டு then இந்த ஒரு program வந்து budgetல announce பண்ணிருக்கோம் that 500 women groups will have access to grant of an auto which they will design the way they want to. ஏன்னா அவங்க நிறையா பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க, நிறையா பொருட்கள் எல்லாம் ரெடி பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. ஸோ இந்த ஆட்டோ மூலமாக அவங்களுக்கு ஒரு மார்க்கெட்டிங் ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டிஸ் கிடைக்கும். they will be comfortably able to go and also spread the message of climate change, and also talk about plastic pollution and things like that. So thank you, Kavita, for reminding me.
Thank you so much. I think we are actually running out of time. We have some time left for questions if there is any, but I just wanted to add something because there was so much talked about water vibes, and Sainath also mentioned how one of the categories for marriage eligibility is the women's ability to get water. Something not so bad, but something similar is I have seen it happen in places like Ramanathapuram, Thoothukudi, where we have something called water vehicles. Na 4-5 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடி போனப்போ இருந்துச்சு. The women can push the vehicle and it can take up to 5 pots of water, and I've seen those women pushing those vehicles around. Alla romba interesting ana vishayam enna, if there are people from Ramanathapuram, Thoothukudi who know this, girls please put your hands up, because I know that na anga kelli pattadhu vandu these water vehicles are part of dowry in those areas. And I've seen it. I'm hoping to go back there and find out if it's still there, but I'm sure it will be there whenever.
Yeah, I can say that it's still there, at least up until May this year, because I just want to add to that region is where we also happen to have a large scale solar plant run by Adani. The reason I was researching that was we found that Adani has been illegally extracting water in Kamudi, which was the only drinking water source of 25 panchayats. That's a water stressed region already, and Adani was illegally extracting water to clean their panels, which led to further the water table going down. And this whole story of women and these, one pot of water costs 20 rupees, by the way. A single pot of water costs 20 rupees, and every day people go and purchase that water. 5 pots can be put in one thing. Every household that you go, you will find this. I don't know whether it goes as dowry, but women definitely, I've seen women queuing up with these trolleys, with water pots, and that's a reality in one part of your state itself. And there is a very strong connect of corporate invasion annexes there, which has a lot to do with the water extraction in the region, and the reason why that region also is going through this kind of a water stress is exacerbated by this kind of illegal water extraction for huge projects. Again, why it's illegal is because one tanker of water is illegally extracted and taken for around 300 rupees. One tanker, one entire tanker, which has more than 12,000 liters of water. So that's what the price at which Adani takes water, and the price at which people purchase is, you know the disparity.